Hi everyone, welcome to the Pakistan panel. Today we've got Ahmed Ayub from Airlift, Ali Mukhtar from Fatima Gobi Ventures, and Fatima Mazhar from COLABS to talk about the Pakistani startup ecosystem. Thank you so much everyone for joining in. If you can quickly introduce yourselves, and then we'll move on to the questions and talk a little bit about how the ecosystem has progressed over the last 12 to 18 months. Ahmed, if we can start with you.
Hi everybody, my name is Ahmed Ayub. I'm one of the co-founders at Airlift Technologies. Airlift started off as a bus hailing service back in 2019, and then we moved into an e-commerce domain, e-commerce grocery delivery service. So we're expanding very, very quickly within Pakistan and outside. So here's a brief.
Thank you, Ahmed. Ali, if you can talk a little bit about yourself and Fatima Gobi.
Thank you, Zubair. So this is Ali Mukhtar. I'm a founder and GP of Fatima Gobi Ventures that brings together one of the leading groups in Pakistan, Fatima Group, and one of the leading investors in China and Southeast Asia, Gobi Partners, to invest in startup in Pakistan.
Thank you, Ali. Fatma, if you can talk a little bit about yourself and COLABS.
Hi guys, my name is Fatima and I am currently COO at COLABS. COLABS is Pakistan's fastest growing co-working spaces, and it hosts about 75 different companies that are all young entrepreneurs and young companies in the tech ecosystem. And before that, I'd worked at Keep Trucking as a general manager and at Kareem as the head of expansion, and I brought Kareem to Pakistan there. So that's all about me.
Thank you, Fatma. Thank you everyone for sharing these details about yourself. So a little bit about Pakistan, for those of you who are not familiar with the country or the market. It is the 5th largest country of the world with over 220 million people. Most of the population is young. The phone and internet penetration is on the rise. We now have over 100 million 3G and 4G users in Pakistan, and we've seen the acceleration in the startup investments over the last 12 to 18 months. To give you some context, from 2016 to 2020, if you compare that period to 2021 alone, 2021 is expected to bring more investments than the 5 previous years combined. We're expected to hit $200 million in VC coming to Pakistan for the first time. The first half brought in $100 million to Pakistan, with some very big names in venture capital coming to Pakistan, the biggest one being Kleiner Perkins, which invested in Ali's portfolio company, Tajir, leading their $17 million round. So this has been the progress. Now, if we can start with Ali and talk a little bit about this acceleration in the ecosystem, and also some of the history of how the ecosystem has progressed and why anyone outside Pakistan should look at the market and invest in the local startups.
Mm-hmm. So I think for any ecosystem to develop, there are key ingredients that are required, right? The key ingredients being the infrastructure available to build technology companies, the talent pool available to support as you scale these companies, experienced capital, as well as government policies and infrastructure to support the development of the ecosystem. So if we talk about Pakistan and why venture capital, we're seeing that influx today, it's because I think we were late entrants into 3G, 4G, which Pakistan started, implementing that in 2013, right? And as we've seen in many other comparable markets, exactly 5 to 7 years post that point, you start to see an inflection in, especially in consumer internet businesses. So as you mentioned, that Pakistan, 50% of the population or more is now connected with over 100 million people. So that gives critical mass and scale to build the new generation of businesses. So I think that's a key ingredient. Then if you look at the opportunities, the way Pakistan is now emerging is very similar to how some of the early ecosystems have developed. And then in addition to that, Pakistan has over 2 million people, Pakistani diaspora living, in the Western countries, connected to, a lot of experienced capital, a lot of large technology companies. So they're also starting to play that part in bringing both talent and capital to the country.
Right.
Right. And then lastly, if you look at, the government, so over time across, different verticals, there's been tremendous support from the government in streamlining investments into the sector.
Right. Thank you, Ali. Fatima, you brought Kareem to Pakistan, as you said. You then worked for Keep Trucking, which is one of the leading employers of tech talent in Pakistan. They're basically headquartered in the US, and that's where their customers are, but they have engineering offices over here. And then now you're working with COLABS, helping startups, different kinds of startups who are working from there. So from your perspective, how the ecosystem has progressed, what do you see have been, some of the biggest milestones, and what do you think are some of the biggest challenges of the startups today?
I think that's a really loaded question and a big one. I think not much has changed. I think what's happened is people have become aware of how much talent there is in Pakistan. I've always talked about how it is the people in a company that make it successful. And in a population of 220 million with the internet penetration that we have, it was a no-brainer that Pakistan would be a hot market. And I think I came to Pakistan in 2015 for the first time after being away for 17 years. And the talent that I saw in Pakistan compared to other companies, especially when it comes to engineering and when it comes to data analytics and some of the toughest things that we have to do outside, I was really surprised. So I think people have started recognizing the talent. And another thing that's happened is a lot of people that have studied abroad have started coming back and starting their own companies and hiring all these people that are actually able to work really well. So I think Pakistan has an amazing pool of talent. It is situated ideally. The population makes it so that we have a lot of internet penetration, and we're all fast learners, so a lot of technology adoption. So I think things really haven't changed. I think people are starting to recognize the talent and the opportunity in Pakistan. And of course, the first few people that invested in Pakistan have seen good results, so now all these investments are coming.
Right. Thank you, Fatima. Ahmed, Airlift started, as you said, as a bus hailing company. It then, launched an online grocery business and has been scaling its offerings across the country, including some tier 2 cities in Pakistan, which we've been seeing recently. How do you see the progress in terms of, acceptance by the customers, willingness to, spend dollars or, rupees online and ordering those from groceries and even to, bus seats through digital apps? It must have been a challenge early on, but what do you see? How things have changed since you first started Airlift?
Yeah. Thank you, Zubair. It's a very exciting scenario. So just go around 10 years back when Kareem actually launched. Kareem also started their software development from within Pakistan. But when they had to expand, they did see some teams in Dubai and Germany. So since then, there has been an upward trend towards the acceptance of a local product. I think Kareem and Daraz were the first few who actually launched those products in Pakistan, and I think that started that wave of using those apps for local purposes. So it was a ride-hailing service, it was a service, it was an e-commerce thing, and with good investments coming in those two, their penetration within Pakistan increased. What happened with that? First of all, there was a realization that local products can happen, and there is a serious market and uptake by Pakistanis of the whole good things about connectivity and user acceptance of the product thing. And then there was an upward trend towards understanding how products are made. So, like for example, 10 years ago, I hardly could find good cloud engineers in Pakistan. Now there is an abundance of that. I mean, there are so many people who are talking about AWS and other cloud services. Microsoft has expanded their Azure platform in Pakistan and others. So the tech talent who actually want to build good products is increasing. There is this. Then there were a few incubators in Pakistan that started some efforts with some success, I would say. But at least it started off giving students in the universities a way of thinking about having their own startups. I mean, there needs to be some guidance around that. But generally, there has been a trend about creating products. This has helped us as recruiters find really good talent. It is still a challenge. I mean, you have to actually look for some people, but with unfortunately because of COVID, but this remote work has also created a lot of opportunities for people who couldn't come to the mainstream cities. So we now have engineers working from, there's a small town near Ahmedabad, Swabi, and two of our best engineers are from Swabi. They are from Swabi, and they're sitting there, and that's the true power of actually making the best of connectivity and the so many millions of people that we are talking about. So I believe that this is just started to erupt, and it will go, inshallah, a long way. So I think there have been challenges, and luckily, and I think it's been great to have that guidance. So, like for example, people at Kareem have been great guidance. I mean, I've been talking to Mazhar and others who've been actually very positively influencing things, and there are others in other startups and other companies who have actually helped the ecosystem. So I think all in all, it's an effect that's in the making, and I'm just too excited about it.
Right. Thank you, Ahmed. Ali, Fatima Gobi is obviously, a joint venture between Fatima Group and Gobi Ventures. And, Gobi, because of exposure to Southeast Asia, has seen that ecosystem evolve into what it has become today. Now, when you speak to people at Gobi or even your LPs, since you first started raising, this maiden fund for Fatima Gobi, how has the sentiment changed? Are people more optimistic about Pakistan as a market now, or is it the same as it was 2 years ago and people were predicting that, it is going to, have this acceleration, 2 years down the line?
Yeah, so I think when we were launching this fund in 2019, Pakistan, in total of 2019 had raised close to 35 million or so dollars. That number in 2020 jumped to close to $70 million. And this year, as you mentioned, will surpass $200 million. And what has really changed, as this increases, the majority of capital inflow is actually coming in from foreign investors, primarily from, funds in Silicon Valley, MENA, and Southeast Asia. Funds from China have also now started to look into Pakistan in a very meaningful way. And with each new fund, more funds become interested. And what's interesting is the funds who had made investments, in 2019, in 2020, have seen that the metrics of the companies as they're being developed, are in line and in many areas, even better to other ecosystems. So they're coming back for their second investment, their third investment. So we're, both in terms of local appetite and foreign appetite, we're definitely seeing an increase of both, Western capital as well as, capital from the region. So I think, and with, startups beginning to make impact, locally and in the lives of people, which is becoming more and more visible, I think it's giving a lot more confidence to people on the ground to invest. So what we're also seeing, maybe what wasn't there in 2018, 2019, was increasing interest of traditional capital in Pakistan to take exposure into venture capital and invest directly or through funds in startups.
Right. Thank you, Ali. Fatima, you interact with startups on a daily basis. Obviously, a lot of them are working from your spaces, and you get a chance to speak to them. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that are faced by startups today? The challenges that they may have shared with you, and how do you think the government could help, address some of those challenges, if it could help at all?
I think that's again a really good question, and I get to interact with a lot of these startups on a daily basis. The government, there isn't a lot of help. I've heard of special technology zones coming up, and I've heard of all these things coming up, but at the moment, startups we don't have a lot of services around these companies where they could outsource some of the hard work. So they have to do all this hard work. Co-working spaces weren't big. They've now started popping up. I know that some of the older ones have been here for a while. But for any startup, and as having worked in different startups, your costs of setting up the company, your costs and the ease of setting up the company. So the government isn't very helpful. You have to set up the company. It takes a while. I was shocked to know to open a bank account for a company, it takes weeks, sometimes months to open a bank account for a company. There's all sorts of lawyer stuff that people don't know about. What kind of company to incorporate, where to incorporate, who to get in. So I think this kind of information. Now I have sat on panels where the government is trying to make it easier, and there have been more and more companies incorporated in the last year than in the past 5 years. This was a number that was thrown around. But I think the government should be more lenient towards startups. They should give them tax breaks. Maybe they should not tax them as high. They should help and encourage the setting up of these companies. But I think as more capital comes into the country, I'm pretty sure that startup community can talk to the government and come to an arrangement. But I'm really excited about the technology zones that are going to come up. All of that is a problem. Instead of having to focus on their product and how to make it better, they have to focus on how much tax do we have to charge, where do we incorporate the company. These are problems they shouldn't have to focus on. They should just focus on their product.
Right. Very well said. Ahmed, since you started Airlift with the other co-founders in 2019, it seems that the tech talent in Pakistan has become, fairly more expensive than it was in 2019. How are you addressing this challenge? You mentioned that, now you have some of your engineers working from, let's say, to some extent, remote areas of the country, and you were saying that, they were some of the best engineers that your company employs. But what are some of the other things that you're using to, continue building up Airlift as a brand? And what do you think are some of the biggest challenges when it comes to hiring or, retaining the tech talent in Pakistan? Because apparently now there are a lot of companies who are looking to spend, some crazy money on acquiring the local tech talent. We're talking about both VC-funded startups in Pakistan and companies that are opening their engineering offices, which are headquartered, elsewhere.
Yeah, so it has happened. The general salaries, compensations in the tech sector has really increased, and one part of it is the remote work. So many of the engineers are getting a lot of remote work from people like Google and others, so they can just be here and work remotely. So remote work is now being deciphered. So that's definitely a challenge there. We have been lucky so far. I mean, it's been a very high retention rate. I don't know if anyone of you ever heard of somebody leaving engineering from Airlift, but that's a very big claim to keep counting on. So not many people have left us. I think the thing to work on is, and what actually I think that Kareem started off with, there was very little or no concept of equity earlier on. Most companies, especially on the services side, obviously they do not offer equity to people. So first up, we had this issue of people not understanding what equity was and what the upsides are. Then we had to really work hard to actually make people understand what this can actually mean. Kareem and the exit of Kareem also helped people understand a lot of it. This helped companies like ours to actually create a case around that. That's one. But you have to stay competitive on the cash value as well. So you have to keep an eye on that. Another very prime reason of getting more people in and retaining what we already have is the kind of culture you want to create. And I think we work really hard. We are very selective about who we bring in, and we are very conscious about who we lose as well. And in the context of creating a good culture, you have to keep people this feast of learning all the time. They should be able to. There has to be an environment of contribution, and especially in engineering, you have to stay ahead of the curve. I mean, you cannot be reactionary on compensation, growth. So that's one. Now, in the last few years, there's and in this startup world, there is another wave that happened in India like 15, 20 years ago. That's the returning Indian. The Indians returning back to Pakistan. So
these are Pakistanis returning to Pakistan, not Indians.
Yeah, so Pakistan is now returning to Pakistan. So he just hired a director level person from Oracle.
Right.
And he's moving to Lahore from Seattle.
Right.
And that's a big win for us because that's the level of talent that was missing. So now we are and there are more. So now I'm connected with alumni associations of FAST and other universities who are in North America, because now many of the non-resident Pakistanis are in a stage where, whatever, due to our family structures, etc., they want to get back because of their kids or parents or whatever the reasons are, and we are actually capitalizing on that. So some of those talent pool is also available now, and they are actually interested because they have seen things work. So this is also another. So yes, it's costly in a way, but on the bigger picture, they will actually form the true next level of the level of technology we are producing.
Right. This is great. I mean, it's obviously a great sign for the ecosystem that a lot of non-resident Pakistanis are now moving back to the country to either start their companies or become a part of companies like Airlift in the country. Ali, you said that, obviously there's a big opportunity for, foreign investors to come in Pakistan and invest in startups, either through, local funds by becoming an investor in one of those funds, or, directly by deploying capital, directly into the startups as an angel or as, a VC. But if I'm a foreign investor who doesn't know much about Pakistan, how do I manage my risk and what my risks are? Is there a discount that I'm going to get on a valuation because of, Pakistan still being, one of the markets that's a little behind when we compare it to some neighboring countries and some parallel markets? How does that work?
Yeah, so if you look at the risk versus reward today, I think on a risk-adjusted return potential, definitely it's worth taking the risk, and that's why we're very, very bullish. Because in terms of risks, we don't have more risks than any other ecosystem that was in its early days. So if you look at Indonesia in 2009 to 11 timeframe, that's where I think Pakistan is today. 220 million people versus 260 million people. Actually, one of the first exits, both in Indonesia as well as Pakistan, have also been very similar, where Alibaba entered Pakistan and acquired the Raz. A similar strategy was adopted by Alibaba to enter Indonesia by acquiring Lazada.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a very similar trajectory and potential for Pakistan, right? It's still early days, but as the ecosystem develops, we're reaching the milestones required each step at a time. I remember a few years ago when we were seeding a few investments, our question was, okay, where does the next round of funding come from? And what we saw is as startups, reached that threshold, they were able to, attract that capital. And then if you look at a lot of the deals in 2020 versus 2021, the startups that were raising seed rounds in 2020 have been able to, raise significantly larger rounds in 2021, and we'll continue to see that as startups graduate to the next part of their growth cycle. So and in terms of policies, Pakistan has always had an open policy. Investors, local as well as foreign, can hold 100% ownership without any requirements on local partnership. Our repatriation policy for capital, is fairly open. So there's flexibility around that. And then, with special technology zones now, approved in the implementation phase, both for venture funds and for startups, there are all kinds of benefits, tax exemptions, incentives that are being put in place. And these will form clusters of talent and companies as we move forward. So definitely we're very, very bullish. And we think because capital is not as abundant, compared to other markets, that's where the return arbitrage right now is much higher.
Right. Thank you, Ali. Fatima, you've helped Careem launch new cities across all their markets, almost across all their markets. When it comes to Pakistani startups, we've hardly seen anyone expand internationally. We're talking about, companies that provide local services, local technology companies that provide local services, not software businesses which can be managed from anywhere. When do you think Pakistani startups could actually start expanding internationally, and what do you think should be the key things that they should keep in mind while exploring the option of launching international markets?
So the biggest thing is that they should not think of themselves as a Pakistani startup. So what ends up happening is, because we put ourselves in this bucket of being a Pakistani startup, or just our thinking becomes a little bit less. I think as we expanded Careem into different markets and we went into new markets, we just introduced ourselves as Careem, not as a Pakistani startup. And we talked about what we were able to do. Once you have a good product and you have a product that can scale and can, one of the things that you need to understand is how can you adapt to a local market. So you need to understand this different market really well. You need to know all the laws and you need to know all the regulations. You can actually do that. But first, you need to figure out, is your product needed in the market? Is there a lot of competition? And just treat it as any other product that's thinking about coming into a different country. So with Kareem, my question always was, what's my competition? Will this work in another country? And how can I make it local? Local means the language. How can you add a different feature or a product? So make a product that can easily scale, make a product that you can easily be agile with. And I think this is the right time. I think with international capital coming in, not that local capital is bad, but international capital coming in, it opens a lot of doors, and I think people should start expanding and bringing them.
Right. Thank you, Fatima. Ahmed, are we going to see Airlift out of Pakistan anytime soon?
So hopefully, inshallah, in a month's time, you'll see in 45 days roughly. You'll see a Cape Town launch.
Wow. Okay, that's a big news.
Yeah. So yeah, and then there's a plan ahead of that. I mean, so there are 4 locations within South Africa, and then more. So let's see.
Right. Okay. So great to know that we already have a company that's actually looking at international expansion and launching in a completely different continent. So that's great to know. Ali, speaking from your experience of interacting with startups, keeping a very engaging with them on a regular basis, with both startups and investors, and obviously looking at a lot of pitches from founders. What do you think are some of the hottest sectors in Pakistan right now? I know everyone talks about fintech, but apart from fintech, what else are we seeing that's getting a lot of interest from investors?
So I think Pakistan, what we're seeing is very interesting phenomena. So if you look at China, you have very distinct phases. You had Internet 1.0, which created a lot of e-commerce companies, travel companies. Then you had a phase of 2.0 where a lot of fintech, a lot of services around e-commerce, and that's how they went on to eventually then AI, IoT, and the new generation of companies. And then if you come to Southeast Asia, you're seeing both 1.0, 2.0 happen at the same time, where both the 1.0 companies are evolving faster to get to 2.0, but companies starting, so the lines are getting blurred. And once you look at the opportunities in Pakistan, the lines are getting more blurred, both from a company evolving to do more things. So a lot of companies in Pakistan, on day one, think of themselves as super apps and then try to build that capability because they've already seen what's happened in China, Southeast Asia, MENA, other similar markets. So the lines between that from an opportunity standpoint are getting blurred, but at the same time, the key verticals that we saw attract capital are again very similar to other emerging markets. So e-commerce being a large portion, both B2C and B2B. Within that there are many opportunities that we're excited about. Logistics, last mile, mid mile. Again, continuing to grow as e-commerce, is rapidly expanding, and we believe it's just getting started. If you even benchmark compared to other emerging markets where we're behind, and now we will begin to catch up. And then fintech has been in the last year a very, very attractive sector where a lot of investments have gone in. And I think will continue to attract more capital as the State Bank comes up with policies to facilitate the sector. So those are a few areas. Some of the other areas we're excited about are definitely the agriculture sector in Pakistan. employs over 40% of the workforce, is 20% or so in terms of GDP of the country. So we're very excited about the different kinds of models that are now beginning to emerge in that sector. So overall, across the different sectors, education, health, again, very, very large sectors with immense potential.
Right.
And across these sectors, we've already made, we've done investments in e-commerce. We've made a couple of investments in fintech, different layers of fintech. We've, done our first investment in edtech. We will be announcing soon. So across the board, we're very excited.
Right. Thank you, Ali. Moving on to the closing remarks, Fatima, if you were to speak to somebody who was perhaps considering to invest in Pakistani startups, who does not live here, who's from, who's not from Pakistan, how would you, pitch the country and the opportunity to them? And if you can also share, one company you are keeping a very close eye on, and you expect them to go really big out of Pakistan. If you can, do this quickly in like a minute, so we can.
Oh yes, I would tell them that if they're looking for the underdog that is gonna come out and give. Probably looking for a Shahid Afridi when he's having a good day. So essentially,
I'm not sure if the viewers are going to understand the reference to Shahid Afridi. So maybe use an international sporting figure.
Oh yes. Okay. Let's not use a sporting group. I'm going to say Pakistan is that underdog that's been looked out, like that's been put on the side for way too long. If you're coming to invest, you'll get the best talent, you'll get really good support, and you'll get results that you were not expecting. So please come invest in Pakistan. You will not be disappointed. And as far as a company that I'm looking at, this company hasn't quite come out yet, but I've been working with them. It's called GA Kisan. So when Ali was talking about agriculture, I was like, yes, I know a company. I love the model. I love their business model and their plan and what they intend on doing. I think it's going to be the next big thing.
Maybe Ali should speak to them now.
Not many people know it.
Right.
I was thinking of connecting them to Ali.
Okay.
The founder's name is also
Thank you,
Ali.
Fatima. Ahmed, if you can also share your closing remarks and talk a little bit about if you were to pitch. Obviously, Airlift has already brought a lot of international capital. If you can talk a little bit about how you would pitch Pakistan as an opportunity to international investors, Pakistani startups, and then name your favorite company you're keeping an eye on, and obviously it cannot be Airlift.
I think small message, guys, sign up as much as you can. It's Pakistan is a startup, and you need to take the upside as soon as possible. The opportunities are unreal. It's basically we are a replica of what India was like a few years back, and I think our problems and solutions and the potential to bring the startup culture is very, very similar. So that's one message. And startups, there are so many who can be looked at. I think Mazhar is very promising. I also see Dukaan has a potential. I don't know where they're taking it, and so there are so many.
Right.
So let's
right.
see.
Thank you so much, Ahmed. Ali, you've obviously shared a lot about why investors should invest in Pakistan. So maybe if we can just have your one favorite company. Obviously, it's difficult to pick one when you are a VC, but maybe name something that's not in your portfolio if it's difficult to choose something from your portfolio.
No, I think so I won't give out any hints yet on new companies, but I think Pakistan, the opportunity, you've seen the movie play in so many other markets, and then it's if you're thinking about the opportunity in Pakistan, I think you cannot go wrong. It's on track to become the next big ecosystem, very soon. And we've all seen the trajectory, starting off from 100, 200 million, but quickly scales to several $billion.
Thank you so much, Ali.
And that's
we've almost run out of time. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining in and sharing your thoughts. It was a pleasure having all of you, and thank you.